A college freshman just swam a 1 minute 30.03 in the 200-yard freestyle, and his name is Maximus Williamson. Let that sink in for a second, because he wasn't even swimming from a good lane. He'd been stuck in lane 8, the outside lane, the one usually reserved for whoever barely squeaked into the final with the slowest qualifying time, and he still walked away with the entire race. Nobody had pulled that off since 2016, and we're going to get into exactly how rare that actually is. But first you need to understand where this kid actually came from, because the road here was nowhere near as smooth as one race makes it look. Keller, Texas isn't a place anyone associates with swimming history. It's not Baltimore, and it's not Los Angeles. It's a suburb outside Fort Worth, the kind of town you drive through on your way somewhere else rather than read about in a swimming magazine. And that's exactly where Maximus Williamson grew up, swimming for a club team called Lakeside Aquatic Club. Nothing about his early career screamed future NCAA champion. He was just another kid racing at age group meets, same as thousands of other kids doing the exact same thing across the country every single weekend. Then in 2021, at around 13 or 14 years old, something clicked. At a meet called SC Tags in Shenandoah, Texas, Williamson didn't just win one race, he entered 7 events and won every single one of them. His 200 backstroke split came in at 147.85, good enough to rank him 13th all-time in his age group nationally, and he backed that up with a 151.64 in the 200 IM, a race that forces a swimmer to cycle through all 4 strokes in a fixed order, which means it rewards versatility over pure raw speed. That swim put him 25th all-time for his age. Nobody outside the swimming world noticed any of this happening at the time, but inside that world, people had already started paying attention, quietly circling his name on results sheets and wondering how far it would go. And it kept going. Williamson would go on to win 6 gold medals and a silver at the World Junior Championships, and he'd eventually be named the National High School Swimmer of the Year. He owned national high school records in the 50 free, the 100 free, and the 200 IM, along with a stack of national age group records across multiple distances. By the time recruiting services got involved, he wasn't just a name to watch, he was ranked the #1 swimming recruit in the entire country. Here's the part nobody talks about. Even after Williamson became a record-breaking high schooler with a mountain of accolades behind his name, he wasn't handed superstardom the moment he showed up on a college campus. By his own team's account, that first year at Virginia didn't unfold the way anyone expected it to. He'd already struggled at US Nationals the year before he even enrolled, and once he actually got to Virginia, reports described him as off his bests, meaning he was swimming times slower than what he'd already put up back in high school. For the guy who'd been ranked the #1 recruit in the country, that's not a small stumble. That's the kind of gap that gets people asking real questions about whether the hype had gotten ahead of the swimmer. Think about the pressure sitting on him at that point. You break national high school records across multiple events. Every recruiting service in the country puts your name at the very top of the list, and you arrive on campus as the guy who's supposed to walk in and immediately save the program. And then you're not hitting your times. The gap between expectation and performance doesn't close on its own, and it doesn't stay quiet either. Not in a sport where every single time gets published, compared, and picked apart within hours of the meet ending. Nobody knew if the version of Williamson who tore through Texas high school swimming would ever actually show up on the NCAA stage. Nobody knew if he was a genuine generational talent who just needed time to adjust to a faster level of competition, or if he was simply a guy who had peaked at 18 years old and would spend the rest of his college career chasing times he'd already beaten as a teenager. That uncertainty sat there, unresolved, heading into March of 2026. Did you see this coming? Because a lot of people inside the swimming world genuinely didn't. I need to know, so drop your prediction in the comments before you keep watching, because what happens next is the entire reason we're here. March 26th, 2026, Atlanta, Georgia. The Macaulay Aquatic Center, host of the 2026 NCAA Division I Men's Swimming and Diving Championships. Here's the setup you need before any of this makes sense. In prelims, the qualifying round held earlier that same day, swimmers raced to determine who claims one of the 8 spots in that night's championship final, and only the top 8 from that morning session get to swim again under the lights. Williamson touches the wall in the 200 freestyle and ties exactly down to the 100th of a second with his own teammate David King, and both of them are sitting at 8th place, the very last spot available in the entire final. Normally a dead even tie like that forces a swim-off, where both swimmers jump back in the pool right then and race head-to-head for the one remaining spot. That's not what happened here. Instead, King walked straight over to head coach Todd DeSorbo and gave up his spot on purpose without being asked to. He pointed out that his teammate's best time sat 0.7 of a second faster than what he just swum himself, even though what he just swum in that prelim was a lifetime best for him personally. He's going to ultimately score more points for the team and has a better chance to place higher, King said afterward. I didn't overthink it. Whatever was best for the team. Let that sit with you for a second. A guy gave up his first ever shot at swimming in an NCAA final on purpose, handing it to his teammate without a second thought. So Williamson takes the spot, and that night he swims out of lane 8 again, the so-called worst lane on paper, the one you get stuck with when you barely qualify for the final at all. The gun goes off and Williamson is out fast right from the start, but Stanford's Henry McFadden is closing hard behind him, ripping through the final 50 yards in 22.99 seconds, one of the fastest closing splits ever recorded in the history of the event. It comes down to the final few strokes, razor close, both swimmers reaching for the wall at nearly the same instant, and Williamson gets there first. 1:30.03. Say it again, 1:30.03. McFadden finishes just 1/10 of a second behind him. 1/10 of a second. That's the entire margin separating a national champion from second place in a race that takes almost a minute and a half to swim. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. At the scorers table, where times get read out to the 1,000th of a second instead of just the 100th, it turned out Williamson had actually beaten King in that prelim tie by 5,000ths of a second the whole time. King never needed to give up his spot at all. He did it anyway, without knowing that, purely because he believed it was the right call for the team. 2 days later, Williamson wasn't finished. He climbed back on the blocks for the 200 IM final, where Indiana's Owen McDonald led for most of the race and looked in control of it. Right up until the final 50 yards, the freestyle leg, when Williamson exploded with a 23.72 split and ran him down at the wall, out-touching McDonald by 0.09 seconds to claim a second individual national title at the very same meet. Let's put 1:30.03 in real perspective, because on its own, it's just a number. The last freshman to win the NCAA 200 free title was Townley Haas, back in 2016, a full decade before Williamson matched him. Haas didn't stop there either. He went on to win that same title again in 2017 and again in 2018, and became one of the faces of American swimming in the years that followed. Williamson just matched that exact entry point as a freshman, out of lane 8, against a field that included some of the fastest closers in NCAA history, and winning 2 individual national titles at the same NCAA championship meet has only happened once before in Virginia program history, when a swimmer named Ed Moses did it back in 2000. 2 names, 1 program, 26 years apart. Ed Moses, Maximus Williamson. Do the math on how rare that actually is. Here's what happens next. Williamson just picked up co-ACC Swimmer of the Year and ACC Freshman of the Year in the same season, making him only the 3rd Virginia swimmer in the program's entire history to win both awards at once. He's already a US national team member, he's already drawing comparisons to Olympians, and technically, he's still just getting started, with 3 more years of NCAA eligibility left on the clock ahead of him. Here's the part that should genuinely worry the rest of college swimming. He did all of this coming off a season where he admits he was still finding his form after a rough transition into college racing, which means nobody has actually seen his real ceiling yet. If a freshman swimming out of the worst lane in the pool can already do this, what does his senior year look like? What does an Olympic final look like once he's fully dialed in and healthy and has years of NCAA racing experience behind him? Drop it below. Every comment gets read.